The Subcommittee on Aviation will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare recess at any time during today's hearing without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions without objection, so ordered. And as a reminder, if members wish to insert a document into the record, please also email it to documentsti@mail.house.gov. I now recognize myself for the purpose of an opening statement. First, I'd like to take a moment and recognize my new partner here, Ranking Member Andre Carson. Big guy, old lawman, great guy, and congratulate him on his new role on the subcommittee. Ranking Member Carson, I look forward to working with you to tackle the challenges our aviation ecosystem is facing. We have to do it, most notably modernizing the national airspace, the NAS. Secondly, I'd like to thank each one of our witnesses. Thank you all. We gathered today at a critical and defining moment, a moment in which we're presented with two choices. Either we choose to embrace and unleash American innovation, or we carry on with the status quo and watch as other nations surpass us in new and emerging technology. Electric vertical takeoff and landing, eVTOL, powered lift aircraft, commonly referred to as advanced air mobility, can redefine how we transport people and goods locally, regionally, urban locations not previously served by traditional aviation. Don't just take my word for it. One industry report in 2021 projects that the AAM market will reach $115 billion annually by 2035 and bring out about 280,000 high-paying jobs, 280,000. Furthermore, advances in technology such as increased battery density are allowing for the development of eVTOL aircraft, which have the potential to be quieter. They're going to be quiet, more efficient. There's only one issue. No one has a type certificate aircraft yet. We just don't have it done. The FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024 recognized the importance of this emerging technology and included a subtitle dedicated to its advancement. Specifically, Section 955 requires the FAA to publish a special federal aviation regulation, SFAR, regarding powered lift aircraft by November 16th of 2024. Now it has been a year since the SFAR publication, and I look forward to hearing from our witness today regarding the utility of that regulation, as well as any challenges they may continue to face on the journey to certification. Additionally, recent regulatory actions, such as the establishment of the eVTOL Integration Pilot Program, highlight innovation in this space as a priority for the Trump administration. I look forward to seeing this pilot program build on the successes of Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration Pilot Program established in President Trump's first term. Much of the conversation this Congress, deservedly so, has resolved around air traffic modernization. While the FAA expects initial powered lift operations to be conducted in a manner similar to traditional aviation, it's anticipated that operations will ultimately begin to rely on increasing degrees of autonomy. As such, any conversations on the future of our ATC system should take into consideration all current and future uses of the NAS. Once again, I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here today. Look forward to hearing from you all on the state of the AAM industry. I now recognize Ranking Member Carson for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your leadership, fellow law enforcement officer. Thank you, Ranking Member Larson and the staff. Good morning and welcome to our witnesses for joining today's hearing on the state of advanced air mobility, AAM industry. New airship entrants like AAM promise to deliver new and exciting societal and economic benefits to our constituents. Whether it's electric vertical takeoff and landing, eVTOL vehicles, or more conventional aircraft using alternative propulsion, this advanced technology has the potential to improve mobility options, particularly in dense urban environments like Indianapolis, boost local businesses and job opportunities, and reduce surface congestion. But to make this vision a reality, we must ensure all stakeholders, including labor, state governments, and impacted local communities and legacy airspace users, remain at the table. Using the framework created by the 2024 FAA reauthorization, the administration and the AAM industry must clearly demonstrate that these innovations can safely operate in U.S. skies without placing additional strain on the system and our entire aviation workforce, which is why having a robustly funded and staffed FAA is so important. The recent 43-day government shutdown, the longest in our nation's history, had a very significant consequence for U.S. aviation and is a very stark reminder of what is at stake if the FAA is made into a political pawn. A government shutdown should never affect our air travel or force the FAA's very talented workforce to go without pay the way it did earlier last month. That's why Chairman Graves, Ranking Member Larson, Chair Niels, and I proposed the Aviation Funding Solvency Act, which will ensure the FAA's aviation safety employees are paid and the agency can continue its very important work. The safe deployment of AAM into U.S. airspace relies on a very resilient and modernized infrastructure, whether that's physical ground infrastructure like vertiports for eVTOLs or the digital collision avoidance systems that air traffic controllers need to efficiently manage these new airspace users. This year, Congress invested $12.5 billion into revamping the nation's air traffic control system. And as a part of those efforts, this administration and industry must consider how new entrants will be safely integrated into an already very busy U.S. airspace. Furthermore, the AAM industry and FAA should work with state governments to ensure that impacted communities have the resources and guidance they need to develop and deploy the necessary infrastructure. Thanks to the committee's leadership to pass the 2024 reauthorization, the FAA has created the framework that will propel a new generation of innovative aircraft. But we must make sure that AAM is integrated into the national airspace system safely and equitably. Thank you again to today's witnesses. You all play a very critical role in achieving this collective goal. I look forward to our discussion. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. I now recognize Ranking Member of the full committee, Mr. Larson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Nels, and Ranking Member Carson for holding today's hearing on AAM, a very innovative and growing aviation sector, part of that sector. But before we discuss the promising future of aviation, we have to acknowledge the current state of the broader system, which looks much different than when this subcommittee last met 6 months ago. Since then, U.S. aviation has been pushed to unprecedented limits, from the tragic crash of a UPS flight near Louisville to mass flight delays and cancellations across the country and the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. However, thanks to the hard-working women and men of the entire aviation workforce, the traveling public safety remained a top priority and does to this day. These dedicated individuals worked longer hours under immense pressure and scrutiny, and for many, worked without pay, yet they never wavered from their service to this country and their duty to ensure aviation safety. We have to avoid history repeating itself. That's why I'm very pleased to join Chair Graves and Chair Nels and Ranking Member Carson to introduce the Aviation Funding Solvency Act. This bipartisan bill guarantees the aviation safety workforce will be paid and keeps the Federal Aviation Administration operating during government shutdowns. The future of U.S. aviation and AAM depends on a fully staffed and resourced FAA. Our legislation will prevent any lapses in the agency's ability to focus on safety in the future. This committee first explored the safe integration of new entrants, including AAM aircraft, nearly a decade ago. What was once considered an aviation technology of distant future is happening now. In fact, I didn't invent the Jetsons, but I think I used the Jetsons as a metaphor about 9 years ago when we first started talking about this. And we're not quite there yet, but these innovations are in fact emerging in U.S. skies. While the potential applications of AAM from cargo transport to passenger air taxi service are promising, we always have to prioritize safety, which is why the 24 reauthorization bill law directed the FAA to release a final special federal aviation regulation, or SFAR, outlining powered lift aircraft certification, operating, and pilot qualification requirements. The SFAR creates the regulatory framework necessary to allow AAM operations to safely scale so the U.S. can remain a leader in aerospace innovation. So, Mr. Clark, I'm glad to see Beta's recent flight tests of the ALIA CX300 in Northwest Washington State. I look forward to hearing more about your experience navigating this SFAR process. Now, although certification is the main goal for many stakeholders, it cannot be the only objective. The successful adoption of these technologies depends on community acceptance and the state's ability to prepare for future operations. Therefore, the AAM industry and FAA must have early, transparent, and meaningful engagement with states and local communities to ensure their priorities and concerns are addressed. In fact, the FAA authorization law in 24 creates opportunities for the voices of local communities to be heard, including by extending an FAA pilot program that I championed to help states plan for AAM infrastructure development. And so, Mr. Picoraro, I'm interested in hearing more about the important role states are playing in infrastructure development and the sales recommendations on improving that partnership with the FAA and industry. And the emergence of AAM also helps create jobs in the U.S., with the latest projections estimated to be more than 280,000 high-paying AAM jobs by 2035. To help meet this demand, the 2024 FAA reauthorization invests $60 million annually to grow the pilot, aviation maintenance, and manufacturing workforces. However, the administration has indefinitely delayed these very popular and very effective workforce grants. A highly skilled aviation workforce is critical to allowing the U.S. to leverage AAM technology and compete globally, and I urge the administration to finally issue these grants. And with each passing year, climate change continues to be a growing threat to millions of Americans, and the electric propulsion systems employed by many of these new aircraft rely on low and zero emission technologies, which can significantly reduce the harmful impacts of greenhouse gases. So continued federal investment in cleaner aviation technologies is critical to our leadership in AAM, and it's good for local communities. So, Mr. Painter, I look forward to learning more about Whisk's electric propulsion aircraft and necessary charging infrastructure to support your operations. With safety as a guiding principle, the FAA reauthorization law established the necessary framework to safely scale AAM in the United States, grow the aviation workforce, invest in cleaner aviation technology, and partner with states and local communities on future operations. So I do want to say, it may sound like I'm bragging about the FAA authorization law that we passed in 2024, but you all deserve great thanks on this committee for seeing the future and taking care of these issues, showing this committee does do its work. And frankly, I want to say I'm glad we're back to work in this committee as well. So I look forward to exploring how we can all support the safe and efficient integration of these new entrants in the airspace. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Briefly take a moment to explain our lighting system. 3 lights in front of you, green go, yellow obviously. Start wrapping up, and red means conclude your remarks. I ask unanimous consent that the witnesses' full statements be included in the record without objection so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open until such time as our witnesses have provided answers to any questions that may be submitted to them in writing. Without objection so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the record remain open today for 15 days for any additional comments and information submitted by members or witnesses to be included in the record of today's hearing. Without objection so ordered. And as your written testimony has been made part of the record, the subcommittee asks that you keep your remarks to 5 minutes. With that, Mr. Clark, you're recognized.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Chairman Nels, Ranking Member Carson, and all the members of the subcommittee. Want to say a special thank you to Chairman Graves. Chairman Graves is actually, I think, the only member of this T&I group that has flown our airplane. In fact, he flew it over the beautiful Ozarks on about a 100-degree day last summer. And one of 2 things is true. Either he's a very good pilot or our plane is very easy to fly. But he did a phenomenal job in the pilot seat. And my point of bringing that up is that this is real. And of course, Mr. Larson, we were out flying in your region of the woods not too long ago doing demonstration flights. So aviation is moving to all-electric advanced air mobility, and we at Beta are doing it in a stepwise approach. So on behalf of our entire industry and Beta Technologies specifically, thanks for having me here. My name is Kyle Clark. I'm the founder and CEO of Beta Technologies. We're an American aerospace company located up in Vermont. And we've gone into this industry slightly different than the balance. We are focused on moving cargo, medical, logistics things first, and then moving into urban air mobility. We're doing this with an American workforce, an American supply chain, and I think that this next generation of innovations will fortify America's industrial base and position the United States as a country to build the future of aviation. We've got all of the things in place to do this. We need to do a few things that Mr. Carson said, which is unblock this industry with clear and unmoving goalposts and allow the FAA to use the tools at its disposal to get through the type certification you referenced. You know, when most people think about urban air mobility, they think about jumping over traffic initially. This is not Beta's initial mission. As I mentioned, cargo medical logistics is a great, low-risk, easy application to start with before going to urban air mobility. The infrastructure exists today to do this. And by increasing these transportation options, I think we can ensure that every community can benefit from these technologies. We're a company of aviators. Everybody at Beta is either a pilot or becoming a pilot. We've got nearly 1,000 people up in Vermont, and that gives us an extreme focus on safety. We've designed an extremely simple aircraft with a pragmatic, stepwise approach into certification. Last summer, we became the first company to get one meaningful type certification on a part of the airplane, the propeller, and we're very close to doing it on the engine. Next is the airplane that Chairman Graves flew, and next is the VTOL, all in a stepwise build-up approach. This approach, in my belief, recognizes the readiness and the regulatory framework today to incorporate this technology in a thoughtful, safe, and methodical way. To demonstrate this, as evidenced by a few of these examples, we've flown over 100,000 miles in this class of aircraft to more than 380 airports domestically. We've actually flown in 10 different countries. We opened the Paris Air Show with American technology this year. We flew into JFK, Atlanta, Boston, all over New York City, and most importantly, to a bunch of regional airports throughout the country that hold exceptional promise. We're heavily energized and invested in the eVTOL integration pilot program. Thank you for referencing that. We see that as the ability, that will be the unlock to get us in front of China. It is the low altitude economy that is the buzz in China right now, is facilitating the advancement of that technology at an extreme rate. The EIPP program allows us to launch domestic applications and operations as early as next summer, next year. We need to stay on track there to get this done. What happened in the drone industry, I don't think we can let happen in the eVTOL industry. The technology is here. The leading companies in the world are in the United States. We need the FAA to show up with us to make sure that these things get deployed. You know, the ask here of you in Congress, you guys represent constituents and communities that are facing real challenges. Again, these technologies can better those communities today. Technology does make aviation safer. It is a proven fact across a long period of time. Electric aviation is fundamentally safer than traditional legacy aviation. The electric aircraft that we produce and others produce here have all of the things in it for self-awareness and external situational awareness to keep planes away from each other. That is inherent and for free in modern aircraft. We're going to certify in the United States first. That's our strategy. We're working closely with the FAA, and we're working with our domestic suppliers. We're not asking for this process to be easy. We're just asking, as you mentioned before, we're asking for the goalposts to stay steady, for people to show up and be accountable, and for the FAA to meet their compulsory timelines that we believe should be in place for responses to things when we produce statistically relevant data sets.
Thank you, Mr.
I think I'm over time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Painter, you're recognized.
Good morning, Chairman Nels, Ranking Member Carson, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify about the state of advanced air mobility and the industry and how the United States can continue to lead this emerging global market. My name is Tyler Painter, CFO of Whisk, an American AAM company committed to making safe, everyday flight available for everybody. Just like the U.S. led previous advancements in aviation, I'm confident that today's investments from industry and the focus in AAM are laying the foundation for the U.S. to lead this technology revolution in mobility. Thanks to the recent efforts of this committee and the regulatory efforts of the FAA and the DOT, the foundational state of the U.S. AAM industry is strong. However, for the U.S. to lead AAM and aviation globally, we must also prioritize the development of a regulatory framework to enable autonomy. The U.S. AAM national strategy, implemented through the new Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing and AAM Integration Pilot Program, the EIPP, will be a key vehicle to inform that framework. Whisk, a Boeing subsidiary, aims to be the first to design and manufacture an FAA-certified autonomous passenger-carrying air taxi. Safety is at the core of everything that we do. Our learnings over the last 15 years and 6 generations of aircraft will culminate in the safe integration of our Gen 6 aircraft into the National Airspace System. Autonomy is not a new or radical advancement in aviation, but rather an evolution of what already exists today. Increasing levels of autonomy have and will continue to improve safety. Most functions on commercial aircraft involve automation today. And while Whisk aircraft do not have a pilot on board, human oversight remains critical. Remote crew members will supervise and communicate with air traffic control. Our aircraft will initially fly on predetermined routes and predetermined destinations. This approach will ensure predictability and safe integration of our aircraft into today's airspace. We're excited to launch our service in the U.S., bringing time savings to commuters and new workforce opportunities to local communities. Last year, we announced a partnership with the city of Sugar Land, Texas, to identify and assess locations for vertiports and potential training and maintenance facilities at Sugar Land Regional Airport, which will serve as a gateway for establishment of a larger Whisk network throughout the greater Houston area. The AAM industry is fortunate to have a forward-leaning FAA administrator who prioritizes safety and innovation. Administrator Bedford and DOT Secretary Duffy's willingness to work with industry and chart regulatory pathways for new technologies is crucial. Our partnerships with those like Houston are strengthened by this administration's focus on AAM and the creation of the EIPP. Whisk looks forward to participating in this program. Whisk also commends this committee and the administration's focus on modernizing the national airspace system by building the brand new air traffic control system. As Chairman Nels has stated, this effort is about more than modernizing ATC, but about modernizing the entire NAS for the existing and future operations. Fortunately, there is existing technology that can both enhance the safety of today's airspace and future-proof it for autonomous operations. Whisk and our affiliate SkyGrid are architecting modern airspace management tools to reduce the burden on air traffic control and safely integrate increasingly autonomous aircraft into the NAS. This includes moving our systems into the digital era, embracing open architectures and digital communications, and implementing a new set of innovative flight rules to take full advantage of today's technology. I'd like to thank this committee for its bipartisan work on the 2024 FAA Reauthorization Act. A key provision was the creation of the Center of Advanced Aviation Technology, the CAT, in Texas. Whisk looks forward to unlocking key autonomy elements through our work with CAT and with the EIPP. In conclusion, I'm confident the U.S. will remain the global leader in aviation, just as we have over the first century of aviation, and that we will define and lead the global AAM industry. To achieve this, we must remain focused and create and exercise a robust and practical regulatory framework that also enables autonomy. Whisk looks forward to continuing to work with you to make safe, everyday flight a reality for everyone. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Painter. Mr. Rose, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Robert Rose, CEO and co-founder of Reliable Robotics. Thank you, Chairman Nels. Thank you, Ranking Member Carson. Congratulations for the opportunity to speak. Also, thank you to Chairman Graves and Ranking Member Larson as well for your contributions to the aviation industry. They are greatly appreciated. It really is an honor to be here. I'm very excited to discuss aviation automation and autonomy, topics that are very important to me and I believe very important to the nation. In fact, I believe aviation autonomy is going to be one of the most important technology advancements for the United States this century. Let me explain why. When I was a kid, I remember reading that aviation systems and aviation technology were one of the top 5 exports of the United States, and this is actually still true today. But for it to remain this way, we must continue to drive forward new safety-enhancing technology and enhancements for aircraft, including autonomy, so that we can continue to drive forward to be a prime exporter of aviation systems throughout the 21st century. We started Reliable Robotics because of the importance of this technology to the future of the United States for both our long-term economic security, but also our national security. And we are committed to certifying autonomous systems and safety-enhancing technologies in the United States with the FAA. Founded in 2017, we now have over 150 employees in 23 states. Reliable is developing technologies that will improve the safety and utility of commercial as well as military aircraft. These technologies include continuous autopilot engagement, terrain-aware navigation and flight planning, as well as DAA, or detect and avoid, and I'll speak more on these in a moment. But I want to share too, I'm also, in addition to Reliable Robotics, I'm also the CEO of Reliable Airlines, a regional air cargo carrier based in Albuquerque. And we serve communities in New Mexico, Colorado, and the Four Corners region with air cargo services. We've now flown over 5,000 flights and have transported millions of pounds of goods over our 3 years of operation. It's important to understand that regional air cargo is an essential lifeline for small towns and rural communities in this country. I'm proud that our small airline has been able to support people and small businesses, connecting them to the world with next-day delivery services. But regional air cargo carries greater risks than most other forms of commercial aviation. These aircraft are operated single pilot at lower altitudes, closer to terrain, and in substantially more adverse weather conditions than large jets, and all with significantly less automation. Regional air cargo pilots will tell you that what they do is real flying. The technology that we're certifying with the FAA will substantially enhance the safety of these operations, and our airline in Albuquerque will be the first place we deploy it. Continuous autopilot engagement and always-on autopilot that's enabled for taxi, takeoff, and landing will substantially reduce the risk of loss of control accidents, or LOC, which is one of the most common causes of fatal accidents in aviation. Number 2, our terrain-aware navigation and flight planning system, put simply a flight management system that knows where the ground is, will reduce the risk of controlled flight into terrain, CFIT, which is another one of the most common and highly preventable causes of accidents in aviation. Finally, our DAA, or detect and avoid system, which uses our in-house developed radar, as well as the FAA's Airborne Collision Avoidance System, or ACAS-X algorithm, will prevent mid-air collisions and save lives. Taken separately, these technologies will go a long way toward enabling regional air cargo to reach levels of safety that rival the 121 world. But taken together, you can operate an aircraft autonomously, and that's where things get really interesting. Autonomy in regional air cargo will spark a revolution that will enable us to connect even more communities and provide levels of service that exceed what we have today. And this same technology will also help logistics operations for the military. To paraphrase Admiral Paparo, he said recently, "We should never send a human being to do what a machine can do." Uncrewed commercial airlift in a contested logistics environment would enhance our ability to sustain. And I'm proud to report that we recently won a contract with the U.S. Air Force to deploy our technology for INDOPACOM starting next year. I want to thank this committee for giving attention to this important topic, but I also want to use this platform to give a thanks to the FAA. Their support for our program is crucial to our success, to our nation's success. Safety is a team sport. It's because of this unique public-private partnership that we have in aviation that we're able to move aviation safety forward. With continued focus on automation and autonomy, I look forward to a future where the U.S. continues to be a driving force in the aviation industry well into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Mr. Pecoraro, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Nels, Ranking Member Carson, Ranking Member Larson, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate you inviting me to join you today for this hearing on advanced air mobility. My name is Greg Pecoraro, and I'm the President and CEO of the National Association of State Aviation Officials, representing state government agencies of all 50 states, Guam, and Puerto Rico. First, we thank you for the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024, setting the stage for safe and beneficial AAM. We also appreciate your support for modernization of the ATC system, without which integration of AAM would be problematic. States are preparing to enhance their role as the FAA's on-the-ground partner for AAM integration. In developing the NIPIAS, thousands of airports in and around communities are well-positioned to benefit from AAM operations. States will be essential for AAM operations through many functions that draw on local and regional expertise that federal authorities cannot replicate. AAM introduces an exciting new technology, and so several states came together to form an AAM multi-state collaborative, focused on what integration means in practice. The collaborative is a forum for sharing insights on policy and infrastructure to enable AAM operations, engaging with the private sector, and developing common strategies for integration. Aligning policy, planning, and infrastructure is essential for operators to give clarity on how to operate and what to expect across the different states. The collaborative has published its first 4 topic papers and is looking forward to soliciting feedback from industry stakeholders. Some key points are that policy harmonization between states and relevant and standards entities is vital for cohesive governance and successful integration of AAM. While the FAA continues its preemptive role in AAM integration, federal-state coordination is critical to successful integration. States play a crucial role in defining and implementing minimum service levels for infrastructure, and general aviation airports are well-positioned to support near-term AAM operations, but additional infrastructure investments are needed at these airports. Several states have begun preparing for AAM operations. Some have created task forces or commissioned studies. To understand AAM's impacts, identify infrastructure needs, and plan next steps. Others are preparing guidance or operating test sites to test these technologies in real-world conditions. AAM integration creates the opportunity to rethink transportation. As aerial point-to-point transportation becomes a reality, we will need to think about daily transportation in 3 dimensions. What will that mean for the rest of the transportation network as well as the economy? And what will it mean for how we finance the system? There are several important steps that Congress and the FAA or USDOT can and should take. Establishment of a formal working group consisting of senior FAA officials and the states to collaboratively rethink how we modernize our aviation system to accommodate these new operations. Regular oversight of the FAA as it develops and establishes standards for planning and infrastructure requirements, such as charging stations, as well as sensor and communications requirements to ensure interoperability across different aircraft types at airports. Federal funding beyond current AIP levels is important to sustain planning and infrastructure development, including increasing the annual amounts airports receive from NPE. States recognize that Congress cannot indefinitely appropriate more funding beyond the resources of the trust fund and are ready to work with you to develop a long-term sustainable operational funding model that includes a contribution from the AAM industry and distributes costs equitably. Please support USDOT FAA initiatives for a broad public awareness campaign on AAM, as well as encouraging them to partner with state and local governments in this important endeavor. And finally, we encourage continued oversight of key FAA Reauthorization Act of 24 provisions that concern these emerging technologies. The states and the SAO pledge our best efforts to support a successful and safe integration of AAM, working with our federal partners and industry stakeholders. We thank you for your time today and the privilege of appearing before you. The SAO is proud to be a trusted resource for this committee and its staff.
Thank you, Mr. Picario. Thank you all for your testimony. We will turn to the Panel for questions, I'll recognize myself. Mr. Clark, in April, DOT announced that the Center of Advanced Aviation Technologies, CAT, would be established in the great state of Texas. I love that. Can you talk about the role that CAT will play in facilitating the safe integration of AAM into the NAS?
Yes, yeah, we're thrilled about that, by the way. You know, we've got Chargers down in Texas. We've been operating down in Texas in demonstration flights with cargo carriers. The awareness, but look, when we get out in the field and we start doing these type of early engagements, we generate critical data. That critical data is used by our engineers, by our service team members, by our pilots, by our maintainers, and training our models to make sure that we can take the benefits of advanced air mobility, which is a self-aware aircraft that's lush with data, and apply it to make a safer aviation future. So these types of programs, like in Texas, are giving us that ability at a point in time when it's most valuable, when it's a nascent industry. Once things mature, it's harder to move. And by having the insight to do that early, it gives us that data, gives us the ability to make a better and better product. We're at the very beginning of this, right? There is so much goodness. The range, the payload, the speed of these aircraft are increasing every year. You know, Beta holds the 4 most important world records in electric aviation for range, payload, and this summer we set both speed records in electric aviation. We need to continue that innovation and keep moving the bar forward with things like what's happening in Texas. So thank you.
It's great to see the greatest state in the union lead the charge. No, I got it. Mr. Rose, the Powered Lift Special Federal Aviation Regulation, SFAR, published last October, addressed operational and pilot certification requirements. Your company is unique in that you're ultimately looking to certify a pilotless system. Given that, do you fit within the regulatory framework laid out in the SFAR? And if not, can you talk about the path that you will need to pursue to receive certification?
Actually, I would refer this to Mr. Painter to answer this about the SFAR.
Fair enough.
Great, thank you for that. For the SFAR, it provided a very good and strong initial foundational guidelines for the industry as it relates to vertical lift and how you can implement in terms of training standards and those types of things. For what Whisk is doing, we need to continue through the EIPP program to expand that to include the certification requirements and the training requirements for operations like our multi-vehicle supervisor. So the SFAR is a great foundational element, and then for us, as we look at autonomy, we expect to be able to expand policy and regulatory requirements as it relates to the EIPP program.
You mentioned in your statement you have a partnership with the City of Sugar Land. It's in the district. It's a great city, great little municipal airport, wonderful place. And you establish a deal there, identify and assess locations for vertiports and potential training, maintenance facilities. Ultimately, successful integration of AAM aircraft will hinge on these partnerships between private industry and state and local government. How does this partnership set the local government up to be an early adapter to these technologies?
Yeah, thank you for that. When we look at the city of Sugar Land and we look at the greater Houston area, we think it's a phenomenal market and opportunity for our technology to really make a difference in the community's lives in terms of connecting people or things in terms of moving around the Houston greater area. Working with the local communities in every place we look to launch our product and our service is absolutely critical. So understanding some of the constraints of the community, understanding how we will actually, any infrastructure that needs to be added. We're trying, for instance, on our charging infrastructure to use standards that the industry will use. I think Beta's taken a very similar approach in terms of the type of requirements of what the local airport will need to install. Our expectation is that initially vertiports will be located and leverage general aviation airports in the region. So we're working with the local community to understand and assess where those airports are going to be the right place for our vertiports initially. And then over time, we do expect there will be bespoke vertiports that match traffic patterns and mobility patterns that we can service.
Yes, wishing you the most success, and I look forward to hearing more. You know, everything is sweeter in Sugar Land. Everything is sweeter in Sugar Land. So thank you. I yield back the balance of my time. I now recognize Member Carson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm curious, Mr. Rose, how how are companies collaborating with labor to ensure that autonomous technology reduces the stressors associated with the workload on the workforce within the industry and improve safety as a result?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my opening statements, I think it really is important to stress how advanced automation and autonomy can improve safety and reduce risk of existing operations. I talked about a few of these. I can provide a little bit more specifics now. Our system, because it isn't always on autopilot, enables a complete autopilot engagement from taxi, takeoff, as well as landing, and enables a fully automated landing in weather conditions that are below what is popularly or most commonly operated today. The agreement that we have with the FAA and the good work that we've been doing over the last 4+ years, really 5 or 6 years with the FAA, has been getting approval for an advanced navigation technology that enables an aircraft to localize itself relative to a runway in zero visibility whiteout conditions. So typically today, if you want to fully automatically land an aircraft, there's only a handful of airports in the United States, as this committee is aware, that enable fully coupled autopilot to the surface. These cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to install the instrument landing system infrastructure. The technology that we're working on certifying right now with the FAA will enable any aircraft to do this without that critical infrastructure. And as I mentioned earlier, controlled flight into terrain and loss of control at low altitudes are common causes of fatal accidents. And so this technology installed for regional air cargo and other small commercial operations, we expect to dramatically improve the safety.
Mr. Pecoraro, how has inconsistent federal funding like the recent government shutdown impacted states' government's ability to prepare for potential AAM deployments in local communities?
Well, thank you, Mr. Carson. The shutdown certainly was challenging for state aviation agencies as they tried to ensure funding for airports. And to the extent that funding for these airports includes planning funding or if there may have been any infrastructure plans at that airport that had to do with AAM, it certainly would have been problematic. But we're really in the infancy of states planning for AAM right now, so I don't know that would have been a big impact this year. But more broadly, and to the point that you and all the senior leaders of the committee made earlier, consistency in aviation funding is always critical in this industry because we need to make sure that the aviation industry at every level continues to be funded fully and people can depend on the resources coming in to fulfill contracts.
I yield back, Chairman.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Perry for 5 minutes. You want to go ahead?
I'll go to Thomas first. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, great to see you, and I certainly understand you advocating for your industries. So I don't want to sound like a wet blanket here. You got to put your best foot forward, and this is the place to do it. But I got to live in the world of Realville, and I represent all the taxpayers that are involved in this. So I don't think these are science fiction projects at all. But currently, as we sit here, we're dealing with crumbling runways, an ATC system, as you already know, that deals with floppy disks and prayers a lot of times, and strips being run across approach control by some man or woman, right? So that's reality today. As I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the aircraft that you're talking about are still hauling a battery pack that weighs as much as a Ford 150, right? As I understand it, the Beta Alia at max payload is hauling around 3,500 pounds of lithium. That's more than the Cessna 172 that I took some training lessons in. So energy density hasn't magically tripled since last year. And I get that we got to figure this out and we're working towards it and our adversaries. I'm good with all that. I'm good with all that. But when that aircraft is fully loaded with passengers, I'm not sure what the useful range is on a 95-degree day in a DA density altitude airport like Phoenix or Atlanta. As I understand it, the brochure assumes sea level at 59 degrees. Well, that's awesome when you're at sea level and 59 degrees, but that ain't the case a lot of times, as you know. Mr. Roro, sorry. I appreciate what you're trying to do and what your group's trying to do. And I think we should be prepared and we should be futuristically forward-looking in preparation of that. But every dollar we spend, putting panels together and work groups and all that, that's fine. But we're talking about spending taxpayer dollars on something that's not here yet while we have problems right now, whether it's the Highway Trust Fund, whether it's aviation taxiways and facilities. Our taxpayers, I don't think, want to pay for electric charging stations for these vehicles until they're operational. We can find investors. If this is really great, and I'm not saying it's not, but if it's really great, investors who can make money will pay into this. We have real problems today: mid-air collisions, near misses, fatigue-related errors. We have fatal needs right now, and we don't want to prioritize, don't be offended, concepts over concrete. The former administration shoveled hundreds of millions, soon billions of tax dollars into AAM through the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, NASA AAM grants, FAA IPP programs. But I think your industry has raised like $6 billion. That's a lot of money towards this effort, and God bless you. That's great if investors want to do that. But we got to be the stewards of the taxpayer money in a world where we're at 38 trillion in debt and headed right towards 39, and it's not going to stop after that. So my concern is why does the American truck driver in Harrisburg or the single mom in Carlisle have to foot the bill for your industry's R&D, for your industry's R&D? I'm going to point to SpaceX. As far as I know, they didn't get $1 billion bailout every time a rocket failed and hit the launch pad and blew up. We don't want to be socializing losses and privatizing profits. That's not what the federal government's all about. That's not what we should be all about. And quite honestly, over time, that's what the American people are quite honestly sick of. Another point is the fragile battery mineral supply. Congo cobalt, Chinese refining, single point failures. This technology right now is nearly 100% dependent on minerals controlled by Beijing, and that's a problem, and I think we need to talk about it and address it. I'm not saying that we can't fix it, but relying on child labor in Africa is not, I don't think it's a good plan. The private sector is free to chase this enterprise. We need to build something that can fly from Pittsburgh to Cleveland in January with 4 adults, their luggage, and a 30-minute reserve on one charge. We just can't beat right now, as I understand it, as you know my background, but as I see it, we can't beat the physics of a 1960s helicopter. And I'm not saying we're not going to get there and that you're not going to get there. And I will tell you, when it comes to the FAA and supporting the atmosphere, the system that allows all this, we all ought to be on board, and I'm on board with that. But when it comes to taxpayer money investing in this program, that's where you're going to get a struggle from me. Go ahead and do this. We should incentivize you doing this, but you got to do this. We can't afford to. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Ms. Davids, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Nels, and to our new ranking member, Mr. Carson, for holding this hearing today. And thank you to our witnesses for taking the time to be here today. For folks who might not know this, I'm very excited about the future of AAM in this country. While in Congress, I've worked to help promote innovative new technologies like eVTOLs and the American businesses that construct them. And this has already been said, but we know these air transportation systems hold tremendous potential when integrated into the existing airspace operations, both local and regionally, and particularly when we're talking about rural applications, but for sure urban passenger cargo. You guys have been speaking to this, and of course I imagine a future where I might be able to hop on a small electric eVTOL and go from my suburban house in the Kansas City metro area to the closest airport, cutting it down from 45 minutes to 10 or 15 minutes. And no one knows this stuff better than you guys, that future is certainly within sight. I have had the opportunity to visit with some of the companies that are working on these exciting technologies, including some of the folks here today, and I want to make sure that we continue to move that conversation forward and figure out how the government can work with this industry to ensure not just the success, but as has been stated, safety is a team effort. And I was proud in the last Congress to co-sponsor and work with then Aviation Chairman Garrett Graves on the Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act, which became law, which established an interagency working group to plan and coordinate efforts related to some of the most pertinent issues that can bolster AAM and that ecosystem here. And again, the trillions of dollars that this are estimated for this kind of market are certainly exciting. And, Wichita, Kansas, which I don't represent, but am very proud of as the aviation capital of the world, is rich in workforce and generations of institutional knowledge in aerospace. And I know this sector is going to represent some good-paying American jobs, and I'm certainly looking forward to figuring out how we can just capitalize on all this potential and lead and not just follow what's going on in the rest of the world. And so, Mr. Clark and Mr. Painter, I was hoping to come to you guys first. As we look at that business horizon and this emerging sector, when we think about other countries, whether it's China or countries that we work more closely with in Europe, and we see the aggressiveness of AAM in those other places. I'm curious how do you see us, and this builds on Chairman Nels had asked about SFAR and how do we make sure that we strike that balance so that we're not preventing innovation, we're keeping people safe, and we can continue to work on being world leaders in this space?
I'll start there if you don't mind. And I think it threads directly into what Mr. Perry said, operating in a cognitive dissonance from reality. The idea that our materials come from China is just wrong. That's not true. Batteries don't. Our magnets actually come from Germany, and they come through the Carolinas. We have a series of technologies that prevent mid-air collisions. And the adoption of technologies would have prevented the terrible tragedy that happened over the Potomac. All it needed was an outbound ADS-B transponder to eliminate or to identify that aircraft. Our aircraft come with that for free. So to think that innovation is somehow going to make things less safe is just simply not accurate. The R&D that we're investing in here, so China's investing in this with their low-altitude economy. And they're not a bunch of idiots over there. There are hardworking people that know that this technology, Mother Nature is voting on this and showing that we're flying meaningful distances. That world record I mentioned, 336 nautical miles. That covers the mission that we were just challenged with. We're already doing it. So we have this idea that somehow, and one more thing, batteries. Batteries, when they store energy, there is very little to no loss of conversion of that energy into propulsion. So to simply cite the battery energy density and not the net performance of the aircraft shows a lack of systems thinking. As an engineer, we take a lot of pride in understanding the complete system so we can optimize things on a global basis. So back to what we need to do here. Yes, we need to invest in this R&D. And no, we're not asking the FAA to invest in this R&D. We're asking the FAA to keep consistent goalposts so that when we get something working and we prove it and we produce the objective evidence for certification, that they certify it. And we're asking that they use the right amount of delegation. And I don't think it's helpful to gaslight or technologically gaslight science. Science is science. And when we prove that this stuff works and it costs less for people to defease the American public of the safety and the economic benefits of this technology is a bad move. And I do think that we need to do this on a global scale and compete with China.
Thank you. And Mr. Painter, we'll get to visit another time, and I'll yield back, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. David. Mr. Stauber, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My district in northern Minnesota is rural, and for some people, the closest place to receive health care is over 100, 150 miles away. And this makes air medical transport a truly life-saving resource. To any of our witnesses today, how can AAM be leveraged to reduce life-saving transport times for rural patients, and what's stopping us from deploying those capabilities today? Anyone?
I'll just say, I know I've talked a lot, but just one quick thing. Getting into near zero visibility with critical life-saving blood products, stroke medications, antivenoms, or organs is enabled by the technologies that allow us to fly in those conditions. And another one is icing. You're up in Minnesota. These type of aircraft that we're developing can be de-iced practically, which helicopters simply can't. And that increases the reliability of the deliveries.
Can I add as well? This is near and dear to my heart. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, and the only way that we were able to receive next-day services and same-day medical delivery was through regional air cargo services. Small town really it was the medical epicenter of this part of the Willamette Valley. Technologies like normal use Autoland that enable zero visibility automated landing increase the frequency at which we will be able to perform these operations. Detect and avoid will also make it safer and allow us to operate at higher frequencies into and out of the more congested airports that are usually the origin sources of these types of medical goods. But thank you for the question.
I'd like to add that states are very interested in the use of aeromedical, AAM for aeromedical activities. In addition to the benefits for the technology, the costs are lower, the operational opportunities are greater, and I know that in Maryland, where they have the state-of-the-art aeromedical operation, where the state has purchased and owns a number of helicopters to provide this kind of transport, they're actively engaged in following this process because they're looking forward to being able to switch to an eVTOL fleet.
Thank you. Mr. Rose, you mentioned the tremendous airport infrastructure that we are privileged to have in the United States and its role in connecting small and rural communities. Unfortunately, many small airports are facing reduced commercial air service or seeing routes entirely eliminated. How do you see the technologies discussed at today's hearing, including aircraft autonomy, helping to address this challenge?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think this is a real tragedy. The United States has made tremendous investments, more than any other nation in the country, building out our airport infrastructure. We have nearly 10,000 airports. I believe it's 5,000 airports are available for public use today. This is an incredible national asset that we have. And yet we've seen over the last several decades reductions in service. COVID has really accelerated a trend that had begun several decades previously. There's now many airports in the United States that have lost service, some element of service or lost service completely post-pandemic, and it's probably not going to come back. Technology, more advanced automation and autonomy is going to allow us to return services back, revitalize these regional airports. I think this is crucially important for connecting people across this country. Higher levels of automation and autonomy not only make it more safe, but also more cost-effective and efficient to perform these operations. And I think we are setting the stage here in the 21st century to have a golden era, a renaissance of aviation, a new age where we'll be able to fly to more places at much higher frequencies.
I think you're right. I mean, with rural America, they shouldn't take a backseat to anybody. And those of us who live in rural areas, those rural, small regional airports connect us to the world. And I think it's important. I really appreciate your support for that. Mr. Clark, I do want to challenge you. Mr. Perry talked about the critical minerals part of it. And you talk about the batteries and cobalt and what have you. Does your batteries use cobalt?
Yes.
33% of cobalt in this country is mined by child slave labor. That's fact. So your comment about critical minerals come from good sources, Mr. Perry is correct. So,
That's not what I said. What I said was that those things that were cited as coming from China, in our case, do not come from China. I didn't say anything about child labor and mining of cobalt.
I'm here to tell you that 33% of the batteries, the cobalt in your batteries, come from China's child slave labor. 15 of the 19 industrial mines in the Congo are owned by China, and they use child slave labor. I don't want to debate this, but what I'm trying to say is we can do it in America better. We can mine these critical minerals in America if we're allowed to do it. And I think it's really important that we don't export our environmental guilt to get to your batteries and your new technology that we all want to use, by the way. And I just want to make sure.
No, we're exactly on the same page. The assumption that we need to do this more domestically, I am 100% on board. Our entire industry is on board with that, and we should be mining, and we should be refining, and we should be building these things here.
Yes.
They don't exist right now. We should invest in that capacity.
That's not true, they don't exist. No, they do exist.
Show me where to get neodymium.
I have the
here.
biggest untapped copper nickel find in the world in my district, so what we want to do is mine it. So I'm just trying to correct you.
You changed the element.
No,
Let's go back to the element that
The
we
next
need.
time,
Gentlemen,
you're
we gotta
asked about
wrap this
mining,
up.
Next time you're asked about mining, say, yes, we can do it domestically. I'm here to tell you that 33% of the cobalt in your batteries is mined by child slave labor. The Biden administration said it, and so did the Trump administration.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I yield.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I now recognize Ms. Scholten for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our wonderful new ranking member here, and thank you to our great panel of witnesses for coming to have this critical hearing today. I proudly represent Michigan's 3rd congressional district. Our state and West Michigan in particular have a strong aerospace footprint. $30 billion in economic activity generated in the state, 166,000 jobs, 4,000 businesses generating economic activity in the defense, aerospace, and homeland security, as well as Michigan being home to the largest Air National Guard base at Selfridge. We pride ourselves on being leaders in this space. We continue to innovate in the advanced air mobility space. The region's leadership is critical to actualizing the DOT and FAA's efforts to accelerate the development and integration of cutting-edge aircraft. The DOT is looking to support 5 pilot programs to demonstrate electric vertical takeoff and landing. Despite our usual rivalry, the states of Michigan and Ohio are coming together to work with Beta in hopes of standing up one of these pilot programs. Mr. Clark, can you speak to how critical this pilot program could be in a state like Michigan to ensure prosperity throughout rural America?
Absolutely, and thanks for your support. We're excited about that application as well, the DOT. Like all the applications, but specifically in Michigan, where the state has gotten well ahead of the balance of the country by installing chargers, by engaging their universities, by investing in aerospace and defense research. You know, we were a part of the Northern Strike exercise up there with your National Guard, so thank you for that. But the EIP program specifically in Michigan and other states, it will advance our industry by a year. When I'm talking about our industry, I'm talking about all of these technologies that allow us to have safer and more reliable aerospace. So by advancing this by a year, it gives us a better competitive edge globally. So in Michigan and Ohio, I'm glad you called that out. I didn't want to have to cross that bridge. In Michigan and Ohio, working together on this EIPP program is a great launching point because in our case, we're delivering cargo, medical, and logistics to rural communities. And so you have a meaningful impact, you expose the technology, you generate the data, and we get ahead of the rest of the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Given our state's robust manufacturing presence, it's no surprise that the state of Michigan launched the Michigan Advanced Air Mobility Initiative, as well as AAM Activation Fund, to catalyze research and development. The whole of government approach should absolutely be replicated on a federal level to ensure technological advancements and our nation's competitiveness on the national stage. Mr. Picaro, can you touch on how Congress can work with states to encourage collaboration as well as develop a smart, clear AAM planning and infrastructure framework to safely boost progress in the aviation sector?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question. First of all, let me just say that I think that an important step, would be for the committee to follow up on the already considerable work that you did as part of the Reauthorization Act of 2024. Section 745, the Electric Aircraft Infrastructure Pilot Program, Section 912, the Drone Infrastructure Inspection Grant Program, Section 913, the Drone Education and Workforce Training Grant Program, and finally, Section 316, the Weather Reporting System Study. All are critical to the development of this industry, and we'd like to see, as the committee continues to monitor the FAA's activities in these areas, also like to see funding put forward in some of these areas as well. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to see the funding follow the authorization yet, but I think those steps are critical, to being able to help the states, local governments, tribal governments being able to advance in these areas.
Thank you. In our ever-changing economy, it's incumbent on our committee to think through how technological innovations, including those in the AAM sector, can also create good-paying jobs throughout the nation. That's why the Bipartisan Infrastructure Reauthorization Act of 2024 expanded the Aviation Workforce Development Grant Program to support efforts to expand domestic aviation manufacturing, the talent pool. To that end, it is disappointing that the current administration has delayed the distribution of recent grant cycle awards, and we must work together to get these congressionally appropriated dollars out the door, doing the good work that we set out to have them do. Mr. Clark, how else can Congress support the aviation industry to ensure that continued innovation is paired with job growth?
So we have directly 1,000 people. We affect 15,000 jobs in this country. We're growing rapidly. We just went public or funded to do so. And so in order to make these jobs permanent, high-paying forever, we need to get through certification. Yes, we need to support these nascent industries in the ways that you described, but getting through certification will memorialize these jobs and keep them in place.
Thank you. I'm going to get to my last question very quickly, but my district is home to Anzen Unmanned, a small business that assists AAM manufacturers in navigating FAA regulations. And I am fortunate to have seen their work firsthand. It is very impressive. It's my understanding that as American manufacturers pursue new technologies, they're often met with opaque decisions, delayed timelines from the FAA. To ensure our economic prosperity, national security, and global dominance, we have to work with industry to develop safe, clear, and timely regulations to authorize AAM certification and service. Opening it up to the panel, and I know I'm slightly over here, but in a word, how can Congress and the FAA work with OEMs to ensure transparency and predictable AAM regulations?
Consistency.
That's a great one. Consistency and very clear guidelines in terms of the things for means and methods of compliance.
I actually think things are trending quite positively. In the last year, especially under the new leadership, I'd give credit to Deputy Administrator Rocheleau and Administrator Bedford. I think it comes down to a leadership and empowerment issue more than anything else in the FAA, and I think things are moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I ask members, keep it to 5 minutes, please. I'm giving too much grace here, I think. I'm getting taken advantage of here. Keep it to 5 minutes. I now recognize Mr. Burchett.
Or Burchett, whichever the case may be. You know, Tony Dorsett was Tony Dorsett until he won the Heisman, then he became Tony Dorsett. I have not achieved the Heisman just yet, but I'm in the running. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you all for being here. I honestly, I'm a little, I hate it that we're getting away from pilotless flight. My mama flew an airplane during the Second World War, and I'm kind of partial to pilots, especially the female ones. Every time I get on an airplane and they see my congressional pin and they say, oh, and I always show them a picture of my mama during the war in her airplane. So I'm coming at you from that angle, if that's all right. But how many of y'all are publicly traded? I know, Mr. Clark, you just said your company just went public. How many of y'all are publicly traded? Your companies?
Whisk is a subsidiary of the Boeing company.
Okay. Ms. Rose?
We're private.
We're an association of state agencies.
Okay, cool. I was just curious. Mr. Clark, I think Pete Stauber, my dear friend, is very passionate about his issue, and he brings up a really good point that and I understand the chemical makeup is different possibly from maybe what you were discussing, but China is a problem. He's had these mines in his district that have literally been trying to get permitted for 30 freaking years, and that is a big problem, I appreciate your passion in addressing that, but I want to give you a little further opportunity to discuss the ability that you all have to get these minerals that are allegedly rare earth, but as we're finding out, a lot of them, maybe sort of like the diamond market, it's just sort of a created market because they limit the supply coming and going, and the Chinese are very good at that, and Washington is very greedy to do whatever the lobbyists tell us. So maybe you could address that.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. First, I think, my passion is only in technical correctness because I'm a scientist. I was a science teacher for a period of time. I just want to make sure that when we're saying something about data or whatever, we're accurate in our words and accurate in our data. I 100% agree with you. First of all, by the way, my daughter's a pilot as well. Cool. I have a whole family of pilots. I'm a pilot, a flight instructor. I love to fly. Our aircraft initially is piloted, but I do see the benefit in certain applications of unmanned applications. Specifically on the minerals, there is no lack of these minerals. That is well known. It is the technologies to efficiently and cleanly refine them. The extraction of these minerals, and then the refinement to a concentrate, and then down to the point that we can use them in magnets, that we can use them in batteries. That's the missing link. And it's a technology that we let evaporate because China had a 50-year plan. They economically crushed the market. All the American companies went out of business, and we lost the technology. That's the key thing. We used to make, in my former business, we made electrochemical mining power supplies for exactly doing this. So unfortunately, I have a deep understanding of how this process works and how that was decimated. We need to invest in the technology to be able to do this. The permitting is a whole nother issue that absolutely we need to agree on, but the permitting is held up because we haven't advanced the technologies to cleanly extract this from typically a radioactive base, by the way. That's the problem in extraction of these minerals. We need to invest in it as a country, and I know that's not what this hearing is about, but it's existential to missile systems that I used to develop. I developed the electrification of the Patriot missile system, to our types of airplanes, to electric vehicles, to hybrid vehicles, and ironically, even to ICE engines. These things are dependent on rare earth minerals for things like sensors and generators and alternators, all of these things. So 100% agree with you. It needs to happen, and we need to invest in it now, and we need to get in partnerships with other countries that have the specific rare earths necessary for the advancement of these industries.
You mentioned something that reminded me. During the Reagan administration, I'm a motorcycle guy. I own several old bikes, all kickstart, no fuel injection in the Burchett stable. But I remembered when the Japanese flooded the market on 1,000cc motorcycles. I guess, in the early 80s. I was probably just out of high school, but I remember watching that. And they flooded the market with 1,000cc and above bikes. And of course, that's all that Harley made. And it literally, they were making a terrible motorcycle at the time, obviously. And then the families and the groups, about 7, 8 of them got together, pooled all their resources, mortgaged their homes, their retirements and everything. And Reagan put tariffs on the big bikes coming from overseas, and it stopped them and allowed Harley time to get back into it. And the Chinese are doing exactly that. It's the Walmart model on gas stations. They flood the market with cheap products, put everybody out of dadgum business, and then they come in and they own the market. And I hope you continue in your quest, and we tell those Chinese they can eat their dadgum rare earth minerals, and we'll get them right here.
I was shown a satellite picture and a couple of close-ups of a direct copy of our airplane in China. I shared this with the Secretary of the Air Force. Secretary of the Air Force then got catalyzed to lean into these programs. They are copying what we're doing. We have the edge right now is the point.
Right.
We have the edge right now. We need to unblock our certification path and be consistent.
If you have an idea for legislation like that I've gone over, you call me. I want to get involved because I don't trust the Chinese as far as I can throw the dadgum dome off the Capitol. And I'd like to get involved with that. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also to the ranking member for convening this hearing, and thank you for the witnesses for your testimony today. The aviation industry has been hit hard this year. Shutdowns, budget cuts, and poor treatment of aviation workers have left our skies and our workforce struggling. And this is happening as advanced air mobility, our nation, offers our nation the opportunity to modernize and rebuild our aviation sector, which will provide opportunities for innovation and job growth. Advanced air mobility will create good jobs in manufacturing, engineering, and in operations. It will foster greater connectivity with rural areas, ease traffic congestion in crowded cities, and provide people with more choices for travel and transport. It's about building a safe, efficient, and sustainable aviation system over the next generation. And I'm proud to say that it was the Congress that set this foundation in place with the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024, with the rules, funding, and vision needed to safely bring this technology into our skies. But a vision is only as good as the action behind it. Mr. Pecoraro, general aviation airports will play a critical role in integrating advanced air mobility into our national airspace. These airports are often closer to communities and can serve as hubs for air taxis and cargo. However, many of these airports remain underfunded and face challenges in upgrading infrastructure, hiring staff, and meeting safety requirements. What specific funding mechanisms or potential adjustments to the non-primary entitlement program would provide the most immediate and practical support for states and local communities to prepare their airports for AAM integration?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Johnson. I think you've hit on a critical point, and that is that while we have a large network of federally funded airports across the country, the smaller GA airports don't often receive some of the funds that they need to remain, to keep their infrastructure as well maintained as they would like, and also take advantage of these new opportunities. One of the things that we proposed during the reauthorization discussion, along with ACI North America, was that we revised the non-primary entitlement grant program. As you know, those numbers, $150,000 a year, have been in place for many, many years, for decades, and you really can't buy much for $150,000 anymore. And if you bank the funds over 4 years as you're allowed, $600,000 still doesn't buy you very much. It doesn't even buy you a planning study to try and do the work that you need to do to get ready for advanced air mobility. So what we proposed was reform of the NPE program on a graded scale, so that we take a look at using the asset study classifications that the FAA is now applying to funding to allocate different levels of funding to some of these airports so that they would have a little bit more money and more resources. We also suggested that states have the ability to act as transfer points for these funds, so that states can help airports in their states be able to move these funds back and forth to each other, so that when an airport is ready to use it, the funds will be available to it, and other airports that aren't ready can set those funds aside. So reforming NPE would be a tremendous help in fixing this.
All right, thank you. Mr. Clark, in your testimony, you mentioned that over 85% of Beta's supply chain is U.S.-based, supporting roughly 40,000 American jobs. As AAM continues to grow, the ability to source components domestically will be critical, not only for economic development, but also for national security, resilience, and supply chain stability. What steps can be taken at the federal, state, and industry levels to further strengthen domestic sourcing, incentivize American manufacturing, and ensure that AAM remains a long-term driver of high-skilled jobs and innovation in the United States?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, I was on the board of I went to a tech school, and I was on the board of the local tech school for a long time, really focused on bringing high school students into the trades and into technology. That's the foundation, making sure that we have an education system that gives people the tools they need to produce the goods, the technological goods, the factories, and the technology that we consume. But I'm going to state the obvious. The supply chain is moot if we don't get these airplanes in the air and flying. You guys in Georgia have done a phenomenal job. There are 5 regional airports in Georgia where our chargers are already in place and operating. We've been flying down there, as you know. So getting these things in place, getting through certification, making sure that we have clear and consistent rules from the FAA will create the opportunity to leverage our domestic supply chain. And that's what we've done at Beta. We've said we're going to focus on a domestic supply chain. It's a realization that in a nascent industry with a high degree of innovation, you want that stuff very close so that your suppliers can innovate with you. And this is happening in semiconductors, it's happening in magnets, it's happening in compute. And that's what we're focused on. So a continued investment in the tools to keep the technology here through education and awareness, investing in our trade schools is very important to me to make sure that we keep that supply chain domestic, because it all starts with the people that are producing these critical technologies for our industry.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for hosting this hearing, and thank you all for being here today. Fascinating conversation. It's incredible the things that you all are doing. I represent the big first district of Kansas. Aviation is a critical industry in my state with roughly 100 general aviation airports, several commercial and regional airports, and a huge footprint in aviation and aerospace manufacturing. Kansas is also home to several industry-aligned education and research institutions that are leading the way in the most critical areas of aviation and aerospace technology and manufacturing. Their focus on advanced air mobility, autonomous systems, maintenance, and manufacturing are crucial in developing a talented pipeline for the workforce and in keeping the United States at the forefront of adopting this technology. Continuing on the theme of workforce, that I appreciate the gentleman from Georgia kind of opened. For you, Mr. Clark, the FAA Reauthorization Act we passed last year extended the Aviation Workforce Development Grant Program to advanced air mobility. Kansas State University Salinas College of Technology and Aviation, located in my district, produces professional pilots, maintainers, and UAS operators. How can partnerships with programs like K-State Salina help the AAM ecosystem to flourish?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up. So the pilots, actually, these AAM aircraft are very easy to fly. In some cases, you don't even need a pilot. But the maintainers are actually really important as well. I'm glad you brought that up. So how do we do that? We make sure, we work closely with NIAR, we work closely with the surrounding universities that work closely with NIAR to make sure that a part of their curriculum includes the things that are necessary to keep these airplanes flying safely and to develop the engineers that continue to work on it. We have programs within our company, for example, where people go through, they get their pilot's license. Everybody gets their pilot's license for free in our company. They also have the option to get their A&P mechanic's license. And those make the best engineers to bring safe and reliable products forward. We want to see that mirrored in the education system. And I will tell you that, like, you guys are doing it right, and we're trying to mimic what you've done around Wichita and in Kansas. And I think there needs to be more of that focus on the job-specific training, whether it be the softwares, the technologies, the modeling techniques that are used to make safe and reliable aircraft. And I'll use this just to say one thing. We went down to Kansas, and we did all the modeling on some of those advanced modeling in the world with NIAR. We dropped lithium-ion batteries, 600 pounds of them at a time from 50 feet in the air, hit the ground, no fire, no outgassing, no challenges whatsoever because of the science behind it. That doesn't happen when you drop a bag of gasoline. And this happened down at NIAR because of the advanced research.
Because they're able to do it. No, that's right. Next question again for you, Mr. Clark. Thinking about rural, NIAR, but then we also have a lot of rural airports in Kansas. Some rural general aviation airports already have the infrastructure, we have the airspace and the community relationships needed for early advanced air mobility operations. Your company has emphasized the value of using existing airport infrastructure to support AAM operations. What do AAM companies need from these rural airports and their university partners to support R&D, flight testing, and the early operational trials?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the early operational trials. We're through R&D flight testing, right? We know the systems work. We're building conforming articles and putting them out in the world. In my account, there's 4,300 applicable airports in the United States to bring these types of goods and services, medical products, and move people. They need a very small investment in infrastructure in some cases. There are degrading runways or degrading tarmacs. We need to invest in that infrastructure. We mean to maintain the instrument approaches there. And in our case, we need to invest in a small amount of charging. And in no cases are we asking for the federal government to pay for that charging. What we're asking for consistently is the Office of the Airports to allow for that permitting to go smoothly and cleanly and allow us to operate efficiently to get this stuff installed. It's a tiny bit of infrastructure, and I want to give you 3 facts. It's over $23,000 a foot to put in rail. It's about $2,000 a foot to put in a highway. And it's about 20 cents a foot to connect 2 rural airports with a little bit of infrastructure on each end. Orders of magnitude difference, and we get the same benefit. We efficiently move goods and people.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I just asked everyone to keep the rural aspect of this in mind. Huge opportunity, huge need, huge opportunity as well. I know many of you already focused on that. So thank you, Chairman. With that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Gentleman yields. Ms. Gillen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for holding this hearing. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing before us today. So I represent New York's 4th Congressional District on Long Island, and the communities that I represent are in close proximity to 2 of the busiest airports in the world, JFK and LaGuardia. And as a result of that, unfortunately, that means a lot of the people that I represent and people in my neighboring congressional districts are subject to an unbelievable excessive amount of noise from being so close to the airports. And it seems that in these communities, flights take off as frequently as every 90 seconds. I, in fact, opened a campaign office at the edge of the Queens border, and I was outside talking to somebody, and I could not believe the volume of the noise coming from the airspace above. So this has a significant impact on my constituents' health and mental well-being. So, Mr. Clark, your company, Beta Technologies, is developing a new generation of aircraft that can help reduce aviation noise by as much, you say, as 90%, which is something that is welcome to my ears. So in June, I know your company parented with the Port Authority, and you completed your first passenger-carrying flight with a fully electric aircraft to the east end of Long Island and landing at JFK. So do you believe that this technology can be deployed widely across the aviation industry and especially in such a congested airspace?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I got to personally fly that with the first passengers into JFK. It was awesome. Yeah. And we did this for about $7 on electricity. And the reason I bring that up in the context of noise is this. When you use less energy, you can waste less energy. A more efficient aircraft is inherently quieter. Noise is wasted energy. That's all it is, right? It doesn't do anything productive except annoy people. And that is not what we're trying to accomplish in aviation. And I'll tell you a quick little story. I was flying in an air show down in Arkansas in our electric airplane. And in come the World War II fighters. They do their air show portion. I come in on the electric airplane, and the air boss gets on the radio and goes, "You're gonna need to do that again." Nobody was looking. And I was like, oh. And I come back around, and they make an announcement. And he goes, "A third time, I'll get everybody looking to the left." They didn't know where I was coming from because it was so quiet. Electric aviation is inherently quieter because of the efficiency, but we purposefully design our aircraft to do that. And I think there's another thing that's not talked about. A helicopter is always hanging on its rotor. It's taking off on its rotor, it's hanging on its rotor, it's landing on its rotor. These advanced air mobility aircraft, they take off, and for like 30 seconds, they're pushing the air down to make the airplane go up. And then they're flying very cleanly on a highly efficient wing with an electric motor almost silently through the sky. You wouldn't even look up if it went over the top of Long Island. And I've flown a bunch around Long Island, both in helicopters, airplanes, and in our electric aircraft.
And what about deploying it through such congested airspace?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a self-aware aircraft is also situationally aware. Situational awareness allows us to have safe flight in congested places. And I think this is a really important concept, that we can do all the ATC modernization that we need to do, but it's like the groom showed up to the wedding, where is the bride? Well, the bride has to be us, bringing airplanes that bidirectionally communicate over data links to ensure that we have good, safe separation and situational awareness, both for the controllers and for the pilots in the airplane. So our technologies coming into the airspace, especially in the low altitude regime, need to be bidirectionally cooperative with an ATC modernization. And undermining the path to certification through a moving goalpost and changing rules is the way that we keep that ATC modernization to really capture what it can be, which is a complete holistic system for safe and reliable air travel.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing more, but I quickly wanted to get to, we heard testimony about how this technology can import medical transport delivery. I believe Mr. Clark or Mr. Painter, you talked about increasing the speed and reliability of organ delivery. That is very important to me. My sister was 6 years old. She needed a liver transplant. She got a call, and there was no flight, even in New York, available, and my parents had to drive her to Pittsburgh to get her transplant. So I'd love to hear more about how this technology can improve situations like that for people in medical crisis.
Absolutely. Helicopters are grounded because of weather too often. These aircraft are all-weather aircraft that allow us to increase the reliability. It lowers the cost, and the dispatch rate, because they're simpler aircraft, is higher. So now we've lowered the cost so more people get access to it. We have a higher dispatch rate, and we can fly in all weather. That's goodness for medical transport.
Great, thank you. My time is up, or else I would have liked to have heard from you, Mr. Painter.
I now recognize Mr. McDowell, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us today. Mr. Clark, following the President's executive order in June of this year, the FAA solicited applications for the pilot program for eVTOL aircraft deployment. And I understand that Beta is partnering with the NCDOT on an application. What would that mean for my constituents in Central North Carolina, and if that project were selected, and how could that contribute to rural prosperity in my district?
Yeah, it's, so I was down at our Raleigh office on Monday. We have a large number of employees down there. We're in a bunch of your airports right now, including TTA, and we do have, I think, a very, very strong proposal to increase rural access to medical cargo and logistics in North Carolina. And as you know, it's partnering with a couple other states because aviation should not be constrained to a single state. So how does it exactly do that? It lowers the cost of access. In the case that I find fascinating is actually moving telemedicine equipment to increase the level of technology that's applied to the non-centralized hospitals. And what that does is fascinating to me as well, is that when your grandmother or grandfather gets sick, the unfortunate reality is if you live in a rural place, I'm up in Vermont, we live in a rural place, you have to transport that person to a centralized hospital. And that takes the balance of the family out of work. It takes them out of school. It may make them lose their job taking care of their father or their mother by bringing the products, the blood products, and the people in some cases, and the telemedicine equipment to the satellite hospitals, which is one of the many missions that we're pursuing, allows those families to keep their jobs, stay close to their loved ones, and I find that a very compelling mission. Not to mention what we just talked about, which is the reliability of the transport of organs and other critical, very, very time-sensitive, low shelf life medicines.
Sure. So you said in your testimony that the electric aircraft are safer than traditional aircraft. How?
So batteries are an engineered product, and I know that we take a lot of spears. That's kind of how you can identify a pioneering industry. You get a lot of spears in the back. Batteries are an engineered product. They carry a lot less energy, and it's a controlled amount of energy. It's safer because we get to design that product to handle all of the potential crashes, non-normal conditions in any such way. The aircraft is also self-aware, so it tells you well in advance of any type of potential failure that something is going to go wrong. because we have 13,000 cells in our airplane. Every single one of them is monitored. And batteries don't just up and poof. They tell you a long time in advance. Now, if you're a small Chinese electric scooter with no self-awareness, it gives batteries a bad rap. But safe and reliable batteries are what we're putting into these airplanes. And then it goes on, and I'll ask, if you don't mind, Robert to discuss some of the autonomy stuff. But a self-aware aircraft is the first kernel of an autonomous aircraft, which increases the safety.
Let me switch gears here a little bit. Mr. Painter, what is the single biggest issue that we should consider as Congress when we are crafting regulation, any additional regulation for these new technologies?
Yeah, I think, thanks for the question. When we think about the comments that have been made throughout the day, this industry is an entirely new growth vehicle for aviation. And industry, and both from entrepreneurial all the way to the biggest aerospace company in the world, are investing significantly in this marketplace. So looking for a partnership with policy in terms of what needs to change to enable AAM to actually become a reality, and moving through the certification process, clear guidelines with the FAA, allowing the FAA to focus also on safety, but also how innovation makes the airways safer. So one of the things, applaud the down payment of the brand new air traffic control system for $12.5 billion. As it relates to autonomy, we think it's really exciting when you look at the first products coming to market. As Mr. Clark has talked about, Beta is going to be out there with a piloted version. And then in certain applications, we see the real way to scale this industry into congested airspace, into rural areas, is actually with an autonomous solution. And the reason for that is integration into the national airspace. How do you actually have predictable flight? How do you actually reduce air traffic control burden? And a lot of that's moving away from voice command, moving toward digital communications. So the investment that the US government, we suggest, would continue to make is in modernizing the national airspace, and industry will bring the right technologies to bear of how do we actually integrate our aircraft into that airspace.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Ms. Norton.
Thank you. This is a question for Mr. Clark. As co-chair of the Quiet Skies Caucus and the member who represents the District of Columbia, which is plagued by airplane and helicopter noise, I support advanced air mobility technology that can reduce aviation noise. I am pleased we were able to get advanced aviation mobility provisions included in the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024. Advanced aviation mobility that allows the electric vertical takeoff and landing would be especially beneficial to airport adjacent communities like DC, since takeoffs and landings are a source of aviation noise. Mr. Clark, in your testimony, you mentioned the noise benefits of electric airplanes and helicopters. Could this technology be incorporated into the federal government helicopters that frequently fly over the District of Columbia?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So I'm pleased as well that it was put into the Reauthorization Act. It's a really important recognition that our business and our industry is growing. Not only can the technologies be incorporated into the helicopters that we consistently see up and down the Potomac, but it should replace those. A lot of those executive transport helicopters, the safety can be increased by these types of aircraft, and ultimately I do think that our generals and our dignitaries here should be carried around in aircraft that are not polluting the noise up and down the Potomac, cost less, and are safer. There's no question that it can do that. You know, one of the things about the commercial traffic in and out of DC, and and elsewhere, but specifically into Reagan, 20% of all flights are under 200 miles right now. That is within striking distance of our aircraft and other people's in this industry today. That's a huge reduction, and battery energy density and other technologies are increasing the performance of this aircraft on a regular basis. This is my senior thesis in college, by the way, more than 20 years ago. That's when I started this whole adventure in beta. Battery energy density has tripled since the first time that I put all of this together. That means that the range more than triples. So we can not only do it with all the helicopters you referenced going up and down the Potomac, but we can do it for transient airplanes that are coming in from the regions around Washington, D.C.
Mr. Clark, what else can Congress do to facilitate the development of low-noise advanced aviation mobility?
Yeah, I think your continued support and alignment with the FAA is most important. Our industry, as pointed out previously, is well-funded. The technology works. We're flying all over the world. We're flying in Norway. We're flying down in New Zealand. We're flying all over the country. What we need is the unlock of type certification. And so when the FAA and us agree to a particular set of rules, those rules have to be consistent, and they have to be held accountable. The FAA does, for timely responses to our entire industry. Once we spend the millions and millions of dollars we do to prove something is safe, we need the FAA to adjudicate on that efficiently, and we will realize the dream in the world that we just kind of described out over here in the Potomac.
I yield back.
Gentlelady yields, and now recognize Mr. Under for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for all our witnesses being here today. Advanced air mobility, AAM, is transitioning rapidly from conception to reality. These aircraft and technologies can improve safety, increase access to rural communities, support emergency responses, and boost American manufacturing. However, that future relies on the FAA properly enforcing the laws Congress passes and doing so in a way that encourages innovation rather than hinders it. Mr. Rose, I was reading your testimony. I was very pleased to see on page 5 you shouting out H.R. 4146, the Pilot and Aircraft Privacy Act of 2025, or PAPA. That is my bill, which you said provides robust privacy protection to ensure ADS-B data is used only for air traffic and safety purposes. Exactly the point of the bill. If ADS-B is being used by, I'll say, bad actors to, monetize airport landing fees, that's going to discourage folks from employing ADS-B, adopting ADS-B in the first place, or using it, turning it off if they're not. You mentioned in your testimony 65,000, I assume mostly general aviation aircraft, currently lack ADS-B out, and I think the FAA on purpose, required. I'm a pilot myself, and I adopted ADS-B out right away because I'm an instrument-rated pilot, so I fly in Class Bravo and Charlie airspace all the time. So those 65,000 aircraft, they're mostly, I would imagine, in rural, non-towered airports. What can we do to encourage adoption? Because I don't think I'm quite ready to mandate ADS-B out on a crop duster or someone's Piper Cub that they, fly on the weekends, not venturing far out of the flight pattern.
I think this is a great topic. Thanks for bringing attention to this.
Thank you.
I think it's very unfortunate that ADS-B in 2025 is not more broadly adopted across the United States. It's really about safety.
And I remember when I first heard about the mandate, I was a relatively new private pilot at the time, and I called my local aviation shops at Spirit of St. Louis Airport where my plane was, and I started talking to them, and everyone wanted to sell me a new navigator or a new glass panel or something. And then I ran into an article in one of AOPA's publications. You can do ADS-B out for $3,500. And, I think now there are even portable options that are less expensive than that.
I mean, that's it. It's about privacy and it's about cost and also what ADS-B could potentially be used for. And I don't think it should be used for fee collections. It should be used primarily for safety and collision avoidance and situational awareness in the cockpit. I think it's very unfortunate the conversation has shifted more towards fee collections. I'm very...
Yeah,
Let's just
it reminds
separate
me of red light cameras, which was an issue in Missouri for a while. You also mentioned, Mr. Rose, that the FAA has been developing ACAS Act since 2008, but progress remains delayed. What is the main bottleneck there at the FAA, and how might we accelerate the deployment?
Well, it's two things. It's industry and the FAA. So the industry, I think, except with the exception of Reliable Robotics, I think has failed to bring this technology to market quickly.
Okay.
That's our radar that we're developing in-house, which will be the first commercially developed electronic scanned array antenna radar. Will utilize the FAA's ACAS-X algorithm for collision avoidance purposes, and this will then give the FAA something to regulate. I also just very recently, actually during the government shutdown, the FAA continued to work on safety-enhancing technology certification, and they just recently published 2 TSOs for comment. I think we have until the end of the month now. That would put out new standards that would utilize ACAS-X. So I really think the FAA should be commended for that work.
Terrific, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields, and now recognize Mr. Stanton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Advanced air mobility is moving into an exciting area and holds a lot of promise, especially for aviation-dependent states like my home state of Arizona. I'm excited to have leaders like Governor Hobbs and Mayor Gallego and great companies like Honeywell who have helped position Arizona as a national leader in aviation innovation. But AAM is entering a period of real-world pressure where the technology is racing ahead, but the systems on the ground are struggling to keep up. Around the world, other countries are already adapting. China has certified eVTOL aircraft for commercial use. Europe is steadily moving forward toward routine demonstrations. These other countries are gaining the operational experience that positions them as leaders and ultimately determines how these systems function, both commercially and militarily. Here at home, momentum is slowing because we're falling behind on the ground. Although this technology is advancing quickly, the FAA has not yet certified an AAM aircraft, and airports, utilities, and local governments are still trying to understand how this new category of aviation fits into systems never designed for it. As the committee continues its important work, we need more than enthusiasm. We need clarity. How will the FAA and industry demonstrate AAM under real-world conditions with real operational evidence? How do these aircraft operate in mixed airspace? How much workload do they add for controllers and legacy operators? How does charging affect the grid? How do we preserve emergency and public safety priorities under this stress? These are important questions, and the answers should come from environments capable of generating decision quality data. In Arizona, we've had to solve these challenges out of necessity, forcing coordination across systems long before AAM entered the picture. When I served as mayor of Phoenix, our aviation system faced demands few regions encountered all at once: rapid growth, heavy commercial activity, constant training flights, long distances between communities and tribal nations, and year-round emergency operations in extreme heat. If AAM can operate predictably in Arizona, it's a strong indication that it can work in many other parts of the country. And that's the kind of evidence I hope that this committee hears more about. With that, my first question is for Mr. Pecoraro. Based on what you are hearing from state aviation officials and airport directors, where are the biggest gaps between operational planning AAM requires and what the FAA is preparing for now?
Thank you, Mr. Stanton, for that question. I think what the states are most looking forward to seeing from the FAA is a lot more clarity on some of the issues that you were talking about. We need clearer ideas and final plans for what vertiports need to look like. We also are very interested in seeing national standards on charging equipment. We don't want to see airports having to equip with different ways to support different aircraft. That's very expensive and counterproductive. So those are some of the types of things that we really need to see more quickly. What the states need to have is the opportunity in a formal way to be consulted by the FAA in discussing these issues. Standards don't make sense if you can't meet them. And so we need to be able to work together to try and set standards that work across the industry.
That's great. And the next question for Reliable Robotics, Mr. Rose, your testimony mentioned that increased collaboration between the FAA's Air Traffic Organization and Flight Standards divisions has allowed the agency to make needed progress on certification projects. Can you expand on that a little bit, on how this partnership has facilitated this work and what further changes are needed to support AAM?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think this does ultimately come down to leadership, and so things are trending in the right direction under the current administration. To give you some details on the challenge, when you're talking about bringing a new technology to the airspace system like what we're developing at Reliable, this requires very close coordination not only between the Aircraft Certification Office, but also the Air Traffic Organization, Flight Standards, and the safety organizations within the FAA. And historically, the FAA has not had mechanisms to allow alignment between these stovepipes of excellence, if you will.
All right.
So there's some new language in the FAA Reauthorization Act that just passed last year, thank you, that encourages better collaboration through this new safety coordination program. And so I think that has helped unstick this, but also the current leadership has done a lot to pull things together within the agency, and we're trending in the right direction.
Thank you much. I'm out of time, so I'll submit my final question in writing for later answering, and I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields. Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Ms. Poe, you're recognized.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. Our region is uniquely positioned to benefit from the advanced air mobility through quicker commute times, reduced ground congestions, and new avenues for economic growth. But it is uniquely vulnerable if strong safeguards are not present. Advanced air mobility may well be the next frontier in transportation, but if AAM is going to lift off, we must confront several challenges head-on. First and foremost is the air traffic controllers crisis. The tri-state space is already among the busiest and most complex in the world. Even before the shutdown, Philadelphia Tricon faced repeated equipment failures. Meanwhile, New York Tricon remains chronically understaffed. Controllers are working exhausting schedules simply to maintain safe airspace. Introducing AAM aircraft into this space cannot place even more strain on our overtaxed traffic controllers. So, FAA must have a clear, viable plan for, one, integrating AAM aircraft into our airspace, two, ensuring adequate oversight over increasingly automated flight systems, and three, establishing necessary controller staffing level and training to ensure safety. Second, residents like mine in Clifton and other communities are already living with nonstop helicopter activity, including tourism and commuter shuttles that pass all day long. As AAM testing begins around Newark, Teterboro, and along Hudson Corridor, innovation cannot come at the expense or quality of life. This means ensuring clear federal noise standards for new aircraft classes, proactive engagement with local and state governments, and fully funding the FY23 AAM infrastructure grant pilot program so states and municipalities can prepare responsibly. New Jersey and New York are doing their part. The Port Authority, the NJDOT, and the regional planners are studying potential routes and environmental impact. But state efforts alone aren't enough. We need strong federal leadership and FAA coordination between these aircrafts entered routine use. Let me just ask this one question to Mr. Pecadora. Sorry, I killed your name there. Pardon me. New Jersey is home to a major commercial airport like Newark Liberty and highly active airports like Teterboro in my district. What resources do states need most from the FAA to help airport prepare for AAM, especially as it relates to funding, planning, infrastructure standards, and how would we ensure that communities' needs are respected by federal authorities?
I think you already have a strong infrastructure in the area to, around those airports, for public input, is my understanding, and hopefully that's able to be maintained going forward as we discuss advanced air mobility operations. I think that one thing, as we've talked about here today, is that those operations will be cleaner and quieter, and I think that's going to be a big contribution towards public comfort with advanced air mobility operations. Beyond that, to the initial part of your question, funding for planning is key. It's important that we be prepared for the integration of this activity. We all know it's not going to happen next month, but it's coming soon, and airports need to be prepared. And we need to be discussing these issues and creating more public awareness, and particularly what I like to call public engagement with local elected officials. Too few local elected officials, state legislators who are going to have to make critical funding and planning and zoning decisions around these types of operations are even aware that this is imminent. And I think that there's a big job to be done very soon in trying to make people more aware of that.
Thank you so very much. I have 2 seconds. Let me just say I thank you for that. Local and state officials are absolutely critical in making this work. There are many, many questions on multiple other areas, especially on labor and other type of needs, as well as training and staffing. But thank you so very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Hoyle, you're recognized for 5 minutes. So you don't? No? Very well. Thank you. I don't believe we have any further questions from members of the subcommittee. So I conclude this hearing. I think this is a step in the right direction. We had have these roundtables, and it's bipartisan, and I think these roundtables, yesterday we had one. I see some of the folks sitting behind you were at the roundtable. I think that's a step in the right direction, but yeah, it's including everybody. It's AAM, it's all of it. And you have my commitment that your voices will be heard, your concerns will be heard as we continue to modernize the NAS or ATC, whatever you want to call it. But I believe this is a step in the right direction. Good to be working with my new the minority member here. It's going to be fantastic, and God bless you all. This subcommittee stands adjourned.